Hi, if you're like, Kendall, I've seen you with green hair and this dinosaur a lot recently, it's not because I filmed this all in the same day. I'm not changing out of this. I've worn this every fucking day for like 2 weeks straight. Have I washed it? Occasionally. The world may never know. I don't leave my fucking house. Life is but a vapor. It's a therapizor. It's Kendall here. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit, and happy Saturday. If you don't know what Saturday is when we do a little something on my channel called Bad Movies and a Beat, the series on my channel where I talk about bad movies while putting my makeup on. And it is time for that good old sponsor plug because YouTube has had their toe up my butthole for the last 2 weeks. Just sending me yellow cards from YouTube Daddy. So in an effort to not have to censor myself, I probably will. In addition to, I guess, censoring myself more because you just don't like me to be free. So we're gonna send it over to Admiral Kennie, who was securing a bag just in case. Hi, hello. It's Admiral Kennie. To let you know that today's video is sponsored by Likewise, the app that is going to be the cure to your current boredom. Have you ever sat there and was like, I have watched all the shows I can watch. I have looked at all the documentaries, read all the books, and listened to all the podcasts, and there's nothing left to entertain me. This is where Likewise comes in, because what you do is you go in there and you say the books, the TV shows, the movies, the podcasts that you enjoy and the ones that you don't even, curate some lists of suggestions for what you might like so that you may never be bored, love. I have found through Likewise some of my favorite things, particularly podcasts. I have really good luck with podcasts on Likewise because I told you guys about Behind the Bastards last time and it's still an obsession of mine. That podcast has inspired a video that I'm considering doing because I just fell down a whole rabbit hole because of an episode of that. Behind the Bastards is a podcast about the secret lives of history's worst people, and it's just hilarious and disturbing and very entertaining and very confusing. Love it. And now, personally, I am using the app to discover more books. I used to be quite the avid reader. I don't read a whole lot recently. And so, in an effort to pick that back up in the new year, because it's a shame, truly, I'm using it currently to get book suggestions. Because one of the cool things that Likewise has is a community function that allows people to post what they're reading, what they're watching, what they're listening to, and maybe I can find some suggestions in there. Particularly those centered around poetry. I find it very fascinating. I think it's really fun to see how someone can get a point across, a feeling across in as few words as possible. For those of you that don't know, as a hobby, I make music, I write lyrics and stuff like that. So I wanted to listen and see how people are better able to whittle down their thoughts and feelings and intense emotion into a very finite amount of words. And that to me is poetry. So anyway, that was a long way to say I'm currently curating a list of poetry books that I would like to read. Now, this first one I have not read yet, so I can't say whether or not it's good, but I will let you know, is by R.H. Shin. She Felt Like Feeling Nothing. And what a title. Something about the title was very much so ooh, mood. And so that's why I wanted to read it. So I am excited to start off with that one. So if you would like to check out and download Likewise, that'll be linked down below. Again, feel free to follow me there. I'm KennieJD there like I am everywhere else. Big thanks again to Likewise for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery, baby. So last week, we watched that horrible Flex Washington Michael Jackson debacle. It was a VH1 made-for-TV movie called Man in the Mirror, the Michael Jackson story. Terrible. Wow, it was atrocious. It was really, really, really bad. And because it was so awful, I highly recommend it. So if you want to check that out, that'll be linked up above, or you can check it out in a Bad Movie and a Beat playlist. Okay, so this week we are returning to TUBI. Much like any TUBI movie I watch, it wasn't originally on my radar. I was going to watch something completely different. Someone tagged me on TikTok, showed me this truly fascinating synopsis that I couldn't not look at some point. Ebony Hustle, which no, that is not a porno. That's a real movie. And it has one hell of a synopsis, if I do say so myself. A stripper turned detective. Need you say more? I'm really hooked already. We could honestly stop there, but if you want to continue, sure. A stripper turned detective takes on a disturbing case centering on a girl who was kidnapped by a pastor with an unusual personal history. Again, you had me as stripper turned detective. And so I immediately said, whatever was on the plans for this week, it can wait. Everything must go to the wayside because I must experience this, child. And experience, I did. This is bad enough to let people know. Hey, barista at Starbucks, have you heard about the movie about the stripper turned detective where she takes down an ex-convict who's now a pastor, but he's not really a pastor. He's also a cult leader, very R. Kelly-esque. And yes, I know you're there and I can feel you. You're there. Confused, bewildered. You're not going to get any more clarity by the end of this. You've watched my series before. If you start off confused, you will have no more clarity by the end of it. So I just want you to be prepared for that. You're just along for the ride like we all were, like I was by the end of it. Nothing about this film makes sense. We are completely and utterly at its mercy. There is nothing that watching the movie will lend more clarity to, per se. We're just here for the experience. We're just here for the ride. With that said, I feel as though I should prepare you verbally. I've forgotten to do it in quite a few of the last videos. Sorry about that. It has a lot of stuff that's just not great. There's some mention of human trafficking, very negligent discussion around things like DV, especially for the sake of comedy, which I just... But beyond that, the movie's just horrible. Just really bad. And free to watch. So I will link it down below. You can watch it on TUBI. Again, where all of the best and the worst things go to die. This is Ebony Hustle 2021, baby. So the movie begins and we quickly meet our titular character, Ebony. And again, though Ebony Hustle does sound like a very popular subcategory on Pornhub in like a very Republican state, I didn't misspeak. It is not that. It is instead a story of an ex-stripper turned detective. She has a friend named Cal, who is the worse. More on that later. But we are introduced to Cal in the way that they introduce virtually everybody in this movie, which is through a poorly edited FaceTime call. These FaceTime calls are often completely botched. The audio doesn't match. The editing of the video of each person talking is usually off sync. The reactions are off. It's just off. It's just horrible. And it's a modality of introducing conversation that they use over and over and over again. You introduce a person, they're undoubtedly reading a script, and they're so close to the screen. This happens throughout the movie and it gets progressively worse more and more you go along. So Cal calls Ebony and basically tells her that their mutual friend named Felicia is currently in a violent DV dispute with her boyfriend, and they handle this remarkably casually. Ebony is like, damn, on my day off, I've really realized recently that a lot of people don't actually like their friends. Which is a wild concept to me, just hanging around a bunch of people you genuinely don't like. But cool. Anyway, she's like, damn, on my day off? Oh my God, like, are you serious? No urgency, no like, oh my God, is she okay? Should we get the police involved? Nothing. No urgency at all. Instead of calling the police, she gets dressed up, titties to the chin, boots to the sky. But she goes in very like black exploitation vibes, and she goes in and beats up the abusive boyfriend. Handle it poorly, the DV. They handle it very poorly. They make it into this like kind of slapstick thing. But the only thing you need to know is that in the course of this, she met a man, a younger man. His name is Deontay. He is the first that we see of the many dudes that end up coming up. Personality trait of Ebony is that she's an older woman, presumably in, say, her 40s, but she likes her young men. Ugh. Like, she specifically looks for young men. Her being a cougar is something that comes up over and over and over again, and it's the most uncomfortable and pointless aspect of her character. Like, over and over and over again, especially in that FaceTime format, we're meeting her talking to this dude or that dude. And it's so self-aggrandizing that I couldn't help but wonder, like, did she write this? But apparently no, it was somebody else. They must know each other. That must be his girlfriend or wife or somebody, but something don't make sense here. Something ain't adding up. But like, she's always going on and on about how she's going after young men. There's moments where she has like choice lines like,
if you're old enough to vote, you old enough to stroke. Oh!
Cool. But particularly the dude that keeps being really pushy with her is the guy that she met while jogging. He's constantly asking her for nudes. And, you know, she's like, oh, slow down, tiger cub, or whatever old chicks. I'm sorry. Ebony is an insurance claim investigator, which is not the investigation I thought we were going into, but okay. But what happens is that she's like staking out this guy to see whether or not he was lying about having a back injury. A woman comes up to her neighbor, and she basically says, hey, I see you doing your investigation job or whatever. Can you try to find my daughter who's been missing for 3 months? She and a friend went to a concert for this ex-gangster turned pastor gospel rapper named Caleb Truth, and have not been seen since. Presumed that the girl and her friend went off with him and have yet to be seen again for the last 3 months. Ebony is like, why haven't you called the police if your daughter, who's 16, mind you, has been missing for the last 3 months? And she says, I went to the police and they are in cahoots with the ex-gangster turned gospel rapper. He's like so famous. He's larger than life. That's just such a stupid. It feels like if Kurt Franklin used to do gangster rap and now no one can arrest him, right? I don't think Kurt Franklin, for instance, is like immune to being to being arrested, but okay. Let alone like a universally enjoyed person, but okay, cool. But she says he's too famous to be taken down by the police, so she's going to Ebony because she takes care of quote unquote hood problems. Ebony gets a call from yet another man, this time in that, again, incredibly jarring FaceTime format, as like a generally racially ambiguous guy, and she turns him down because quote he is too old for her. He says, girl, we about the same age. So we meet the Caleb Truth guy, who's going to be our main villain in this movie, if you hadn't suspected that already. Again, a former gangster who went to prison for 5 years for kidnapping his baby mama, one of 8, I believe was the number. He went to jail for that, came out, found Jesus, and now he's in the hardcore underground of Christian rap and like a universally listened to artist. And now apparently he's plugging his new book called The Audacity of Truth. You know, and everyone loves him apparently because he quote keeps it real in the name of God. But yes, he has kidnapped the girls in question and apparently gotten rid of the friend that she'd come with. What else about him? He's incredibly annoying. He speaks in iambic pentameter and has a God complex.
People love the God in me, and I love them back, wholeheartedly. See, my mama was a hooker, and my daddy was a fiend. I started slinging bags of reefer by the age of 13.
My talks like the Riddler. He's also like 4 foot tall, if I could tell, which to me explains a lot. And before the short kings and before y'all go off, I would like to say, as a tall woman who was often targeted by short men, by my experience, short men are a menace. Of course not all. There's something very particular about the combination of like being a man and being short. If you're very insecure about your height and your shortness, then a lot of times men choose to overcompensate by being assholes. Like when I found out that DaBoo and Tory Lanez were both like 5'3", I was like, yep. It all adds up to me. Side note, I spend so much time focusing on my makeup that I wasn't talking. So I guess I'm just going to be reading off things. But okay. Caleb is plugging his book again, The Audacity of Truth. Ebony and her friend Cal see him talking about it. Now, between the two, Cal is actually a fan of Caleb Truth. Whereas Ebony, of course, having heard that he's been kidnapping 16-year-old girls, she's not a fan. But before we can really get to that, the more pressing issue is that young buck that she met that was jogging, he needs to chill. Like, he's very, very pushy, and she's like, oh, chill out, young cub. And this happens over and over and over again. This is what I'm talking about. There's like a very self-aggrandizing aspect of it. And then he FaceTimes her and he's like this close to the screen, and it looked like, and it's just everything about it looked like it stank. And I just,
hey, sexy lady.
Oh my God.
He was saying I get to see that sexy grown ass woman body on top of mine tomorrow night. You need to let me dust them granny panties off so you won't be so feisty.
Oh my. No, ma'am. No. No.
Better call me back. I get crazy when I'm ignored.
That might just be a general state of being, my guy. Now, remember when I said that Cal is a terrible person? Ebony ends up bringing up, hey, the 16-year-old that Truth kidnapped. And Caleb was like, oh, she's probably fast. I haven't heard that justification for grooming. It's giving very 97. Like, Aaliyah was trying to be grown when she was 15 and married R. Kelly at 27. If she want to be grown, let her. What? You a victim. But they end up getting access to Caleb's show because Felicia, the girl who was in the dispute from earlier, is working catering at one of his shows or one of his events or something. And so they decide to infiltrate to try to get the teen out. Well, Ebony decides to infiltrate to try to get the teen out. Cal, however, is just interested in seeing the person, she's a fan of. Speaking of them catering, they spend a ridiculously, comically large amount of time talking about the logistics of actually catering at this event. And I don't know why that was funny to me. I don't think it was supposed to be. Another person hits on Ebony because, again, no singular man can go through this movie without hitting on her at some point. This time, the boss, in which she returns in Spanish.
Mi chocha vene oliva. No puedo dejar de puta. Puedes comprar ese?
Hot damn, girl!
All right, I'm just so scared. I'm so tired of these bangs, dog. I just know. Oh my God, I hate bangs. Eventually, Ebony ends up finding the girl in question in the bathroom, drunk and crying. She's also seems to have been struck in the face. She has a black eye. And Ebony's trying to convince her to come with her to go back to her mother. She says that she wants to go back, but she can't because she's afraid to leave because of God, Daddy. She tells the story of them meeting Caleb at a concert where he invited her and the other girl to go with him on a trip to Miami for a week. And then from there, he kidnapped them and they haven't been able to go back to their parents. The other girl is missing and she's like, where's the girl? Where's the girl? And she's like, I can't tell you. And so because she can't seem to get the girl to want to come with her, she says, hey, here is my number. If ever you want to leave, here, I'm here for you. Ebony decides to infiltrate the group of men that are surrounding Cat Williams and decides to hit on one of his henchmen. If he weren't in this movie, he'd be so hot. But like the moment you're in this movie, it's like, I can't ever take you seriously ever again. You've given your last shred of dignity to be here. He's really hot. You've just made terrible decisions. But she's able to get some information from him because she seduces him to go for a walk with her or whatever. And she's like, oh, you can get my number, blah, 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 so she can get more information from him. But during the course of that conversation, he ends up saying that, he's been friends with Caleb Truth for a while before he went into prison. And that since he was in prison, something about that whole experience really changed him for the worst. And he's, into some weird stuff now. Cal soon tells Ebony that she accepted a job as a chauffeur for Caleb Truth. A fact that greatly disturbs and concerns Ebony. Have you not been listening to me? There's all these things that I said that he's doing, and we're trying to get a child away from him that he kidnapped. Like, what are you doing? She's like, I don't feel like helping that girl. That has nothing to do with me. He gave me racks to drive him around. And this ultimately becomes a big chasm in their friendship and they go their separate ways. Later, Caleb's henchman, his name is Lil Dub, by the way, invites her to Caleb's house where she presumably is going to have a date with him, possibly smash, And so she decides to take some sleeping pills over to the house so that she can knock him out and look for information and possibly help the girl escape the home. On the ride there, though, she has to have this very long, again, FaceTime conversation with her ex-husband, and we find out why they got divorced. Originally, she was calling him to get more information about Caleb. Apparently, she's like, hey, have y'all been investigating him? And he's like, nah, he gives money to the station and like I guess other charitable acts, and so no one really suspects him of anything. People love him. And she's like, oh, it's just so people don't notice. And then eventually they get on this long drawn out conversation of why they stopped being together, why they got divorced. Basically it was because she cheated on him and got pregnant with another man's baby, but then lost it. And somehow, because no one can stop talking to Ebony, apparently they've somehow stayed friends. He even thanks her for cheating on him because otherwise they wouldn't be in each other's lives anymore. Y'all have some resilience that I just simply don't want. I was gonna say don't have, but I don't want that. They have no kids to tie them together. There's nothing making them communicate with each other. I'm just really happy to have known you for some reason. Girl, cut the cord, baby. Get out. Y'all in these soul ties are weird. Did I finally do it? Did I finally get my bangs to look decent? Ooh, close enough. So she ends up going over the house to see Lil Dub. His name is Lil Dub. She gives him the sleeping pills as well as the alcohol, and he knocks out while she goes to the bathroom. While in the bathroom, she has a flashback to 10 years ago where she was a stripper, and this flashback doesn't really do or establish anything, I guess, other than reminding us that she used to be a stripper. I guess she was the strong one at the strip club. Like, she didn't need a pimp, even though a stripper wouldn't, right? Am I missing something? I mean, I guess, well, the other strippers were also doing sex work, but like still, this whole cut scene was stupid and pointless. It did nothing. Ebony goes out to find the girl. She's there. They're both incredibly loud for being people that are sneaking out of a house and also not moving very expeditiously at all.
I love these shoes.
Can you run in on?
Yes.
If you don't get the out of, girl. Maybe because they were taking so damn long, they end up getting caught by Caleb and his people. And that munchkin is very, very upset. Napoleon is a fucking liability. And he knocks everybody out, including Cal, because that was her friend, right? So they were like, oh, that's your people that's trying to take my property or whatever. He knocks her out too. They wake up in a seance room. I know this book, follow me. You have no hope if you're lost now. They wake up in a room about to be made a blood sacrifice. Mind you, this entire encounter, him knocking them out, catching them, kidnapping them, tying them up, about to start the seance, is all done in rhyme.
It's gonna be so nice! Have your head on my altar as a sacrifice!
Before he can make the blood sacrifice, Lil Dub saves them for some reason. I don't know. We don't ever find out. It's just what it is. Just take it.
You busted in your head. You lucky it wasn't me, because I'd have filled your ass with lead.
The girl ends up telling the story of how they got kidnapped originally, and basically, long story short, the girl that came with her did get killed for trying to escape. Now that that's been solved, theoretically, the movie should be over. But you'd be wrong for thinking that, because apparently we got a whole bunch of other shit that we need to close the door on, apparently. Because remember that guy that kept asking for nudes through the whole freaking movie? So apparently he becomes our next nemesis of the movie, because Ebony comes back home and he's there already drunk, apparently willing to do her harm. She has a loaded gun pointing at him, and somehow he's still able to overpower her with a taser. And so he tases her into unconsciousness and straps her to the bed, presumably planning to do, again, harm. And I will admit, this was a very effectively disgusting and sufficiently creepy scene that was completely unnecessary. I got the sense that the guy who was acting just took his job a little too seriously. It was nasty. It was nasty. But he gets taken out by the quote-unquote old guy, the racially ambiguous random old guy from the beginning. And he just happened to break into her house at the same time, I guess. I don't know. They bond over their mutual love of the saying, if you're old enough to vote. Sure. And then she eventually says to him that the reason she likes to date younger men is because they make her feel young. And he's like, age is but a number or a state of mind or whatever. Again, acting as if they're the same age. Like, what is he, like maybe in his late 20s and she's definitely in her 40s? You know what I mean? You're not the same age. You're nowhere near the same age. But anyway, wow, it's still not over. Okay, there's still a lot more. Ebony quits her job, and I forgot she even had one other than what she was doing. Another woman hears of what she'd done for the woman who was looking for her teenage daughter, and she asks would she consider looking for her son, and I'm like, oh my god, not sequel bait. And I again expect it to fade to black, and it doesn't because the teenage girl's mom gives Ebony a letter thanking her for helping find her daughter. She basically says that the daughter admires her so much and admires her to the extent that she's going to name her newborn child, she's currently pregnant and expecting, after her and her friend that died. Whose baby is it? Are we not gonna acknowledge that this might be a horrible development? This is not, and they play it like, oh, this is how endearing. The 16-year-old pregnant girl who's probably pregnated by her abuser and kidnapper is going to name the baby after you. And her dead friend. And it's still not over. Because we got to know that Felicia is dating the Spanish-speaking dude, her boss. Cal and Ebony make up, and eventually, finally, the movie ends when Ebony returns the call from the woman that's like, hey, can you find my son? And she's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna take on this new job. And again, sequel bait, presumably. And that is the end of this movie. Stupid as shit. Oh my god! In the course of editing this, I realized that I was so swift to turn off the movie that I didn't notice that there was a full music video at the end credits. Caleb Truth's song Take 'Em to Church. It's fucking terrible as well. About on par. There is no amount of vengeance, there is no amount of violence that will ever atone. It's movies like this that really remind me about why I make this series, because I would have no peace if I just had to watch this movie and just was left with it. If I didn't have a platform to tell people that I just wasted my time in this way, left with this feeling of like, wow, this is how I just spent an hour and a half of my finite time on this planet. Because otherwise I'd just be left craving violence. I guess in this way, Bad Movies in a Beat is an act of world peace. So anyway, that's all for today, folks. I hope you liked today's video. If you watched the movie, please let me know and tweet me or comment down below what you thought about it, how you were able to sustain your time. Again, it's free on TUBI. Look at it down below. Big thanks again to today's sponsor, Likewise, for sponsoring today's video. And if you want to send me any other bad movies recommendations, you can put those down in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram, Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. And I will see you guys next time. Bye. You guys, I've just accepted that green is my new favorite color. Like, everything I own now is green. Is this me truly coming into my Capricorn earth sign status? Goat gang, even though this is gonna go out and Aquariuses are around again, I guess, whatever.